Welcome to Being a Successful Leader with Carl Welty. Carl is a leadership pioneer with years of challenging leadership and consulting experience. Here's Carl with some valuable insights, practical and proven methods for being a successful leader.
Good day. Carl Welty here, your host of the podcast series, Being a Successful Leader. Welcome to another episode. We have 26 episodes, a week apart, each episode running from 15 minutes to a half hour. Three imperatives I have that I built the podcast around. The first one is you as a leader, being a skillful, self-aware leader. The second of the three imperatives is formulating and executing a sound strategy. And the third is to develop construct a climate, a culture of commitment. So you need all three. An effective leader, it all begins with you, having a sound strategy. Who are we? What do we stand for? And then having people rally around that, with a committed culture. We're in the, ending part of the middle, imperative. What we've been doing is, on the sound strategy is walking through my strategic framework model. And we talked about the identity dimension, which is your foundation. This is what you drive off of. Everything flows from your identity, your purpose, and your core values. And then we moved into the direction dimension, and that consists of a sound strategy and having a vision, and then driving strategies from that vision, and then actions to implement the strategies. And the final dimension in my strategic framework model is execution, because it all fails if you don't, as a leadership team, really have due diligence to make it happen. Okay, for your reference, my website, welty.com, you can go there and catch up on any of the past episodes. You just scroll over to leadership resources, and then you can find in there the podcast icon. Just click on that and click on any episode that you want to visit or revisit. Very handy to have. Also, my books are there, and the book that pertains to what we're talking about now, to sound strategy, is called Making and Fulfilling Your Dreams as a Leader. Complements what we're talking about very, very nicely. Gives you more detail, charts, graphs, that sort of thing, and for your continuing reference. So highly recommend that to you, Making and Fulfilling Your Dreams as a Leader. So let's talk about the executing the sound strategy, the episode for today. Extremely, extremely important. And you and your leadership team, you need to be genuinely involved in an ongoing basis for executing your strategy. You could have done a great job in formulating it, but executing, many times organizations fall down on this. They figured, well, we did it, we rolled it out, but rollouts just don't work. You got to have due diligence. In fact, execution is job number one for you leadership, and you got to give it all it deserves. So let's talk about some key pieces, key aspects here in working the strategy. One is communicating the strategy. Here, you want to assure that the folks understand and gain commitment for the strategy. You want to use various mediums, in person, your in-house memorandums, letters, presentations, videos, whatever suits the mediums that you use in your organization. And repetition is important. You just don't send out a letter saying here it is and so forth, or to give one presentation. You need to continually be with it. And communicating this either in person or video, whatever, your leadership voice. You need to think about more than just the content and the rationale. That's important. There are three main things with your leadership voice. One is the content of the message or messages, you and your leadership team, and the rationale for the strategy and the background. The other is emotion. So you have the content, including the rationale, and then the emotion. You got to get some feeling into this thing. Why is it important? What are your hopes and concerns? And make it personal. People will lock onto the emotion a lot faster than just the facts, the content. And the third is symbolic. In other words, you have three facets to your leadership voice: the content, the emotion, and the symbolic. So tell stories, use metaphors, use examples, and that really drives home what you're trying to communicate. So the leadership voice, give due consideration to all three mediums here: the content, including the rationale, the emotion, and the symbolic. You and your leadership team need to do that as you communicate your strategy. So communicating strategy is one key leadership practice. Another key leadership practice is living the strategy. Again, job number one for you and your leadership team. You need to model the way by walking the talk and talking the talk on an ongoing basis. And you got to make sure when you not only you, but you need to, if your organization is large enough that you have leaders, managers underneath you, you need to really concentrate on how to cascade the sound strategy. It's just not enough for you. In fact, research continually shows us that people look to their immediate leader managers to get the key, to help them translate direction. And so your leaders, managers down the line need to be really tuned into this, and you have to make performance matter for them to communicate the sound strategy and implement it. At their local level, you want to have a structure that the different departments and regions and so forth, with their strategy to implement the overall strategy, align and support the overall organizational strategy. And that's a very important job for you and your leadership team, again, to help them communicate the strategy down the line and to how to implement it, and having a sound structure there to help them do that as they go ahead with their goals. Think of a hierarchy of goals as you cascade this down with the goals, always aligning and supporting the overall sound strategy. And it's an invaluable coaching opportunity for you, for your immediate reports, but down the line, some great coaching opportunities for leaders and managers down your organization line. Let's talk now about another key aspect here: helpful operational mechanisms. So we talk about your leadership behavior. You got to make it matter and model the way. But some key operating mechanisms here for your consideration. More than your consideration, I'd say these are musts. Number one is that you got to make sure that, depending on the rigor of your budgeting system, that your strategies are supported. They're built into your budgeting system. Of course, that'll vary from organization to organization. You may have some strategies that go over several years, so you got to make sure that they're properly funded. A second very, very, very important item here in terms of operational mechanisms is strategy meetings. You want to separate your operational meetings, your staff meetings, and so forth and so on, from your strategy meetings. They're both important. Operational meetings typically talk about the tactics, the current kind of thing. And your strategy meetings, of course, will be longer term view. You don't want to, Patrick Lencioni calls it, have meeting stew, where you mix together your operating meetings and your strategy meetings, and your strategy maybe doesn't get the due respect that it needs to, and the attention. So very, very important to separate your operational meetings from your strategy meetings. And getting started with your strategy meetings, one practice is to have each of your strategy champions, and we talked about that in the previous episodes in action planning and in building strategies. You have a strategy champion. That person's accountable for making it happen with that particular strategy, your 6, 7, 8, whatever strategies you have teed up in any one moment. And have that strategy champion, once they've formulated their project plan or action plan, review it with the overall leadership team and continue to have them get input and so forth in terms of helping them execute the strategy. Yeah, so that's a good way to get started. And then as you continue your strategy meetings, you'll come back to that strategy champion. They'll have ample opportunity to come back and talk about the progress in their action plan. three types of strategy meetings. Okay. Number one is the periodic strategy meeting. Now this is you get your leadership team together, no less than quarterly, perhaps monthly, depending upon your organization and the dynamics there. And remember, we talked about the master plan. That is your main template. That is your main guiding document that comes out of your building your strategy when you talked about strategic path and converting the strategies into a master plan, sequencing them, assigning accountability, then timetables. So you use your guiding document, your master plan, as the highlight document for your strategy meetings. It's an example, as I talked about in earlier episodes, of the strategy machine in action, your sound strategy machine in action. We talked about the identity being pretty timeless, whereas your strategy needs to be evolving. It needs to be flexible, that sort of thing, to keep up with the current challenges and opportunities. And so you need to continually revise, update your strategy as represented in your master plan. You'll eliminate certain strategies because they don't seem to be relevant as they once were. You accomplish others, you celebrate, you alter others, you monitor and modify work in progress. So that's what I like to call it, the strategy machine. You and your leadership team are continually reviewing it and keeping it alive. So the periodic strategy meeting is one type. The second type is ad hoc strategy meeting. There could be special attention. Maybe you're really need to bring the team together because you need to really roll up your sleeves and work together on a particular strategy action plan that needs a lot of attention. And then the other is an annual planning and review meeting. Where you really take some time and effort, just like you did initially, to put together your sound strategy. And maybe this takes upwards of a day or maybe even more for a bigger organization. And you want to review your strategic framework, your identity, your direction and execution, and then really refresh your entire sound strategy. So those are three types of strategy meetings. Okay. Let's now move to another key consideration in the ongoing operating mechanisms that you want to consider, and that's assessing strategic impact. Now, you can assess how it's going in each of your strategies by monitoring, modifying work in progress with strategy meetings, with checkpoints perhaps, and maybe specific measures embedded in your projects. But here I'm talking about you don't want to have strategic initiatives to accomplish them in and of itself. That's cool. But the reason you have a sound strategy and the initiatives is to impact the overall organization performance. So you need to think not only of how's the initiative going, but what's the impact on the performance of the organization as a whole, not just one initiative, but the combination of initiatives that you have in your sound strategy. So the two main ways to monitor the progress of how it's going and you and your leadership team implementing the sound strategy. You've probably heard of these. One is management by inspection and the other is managed by exception. Managed by inspection is you go out and see for yourself. How's it going? What's the impact? What's going on out there? And each of these have its advantages and disadvantages. Management by inspection, you may have heard about MBWA, managing by walking around. I like the CBWA, caring by walking around. That was popularized by Kouzes and Posner, the Leadership Challenge. There, when you go out, you're genuine. You're not snooping around and spying and so forth. You're out there because you care to monitor what's going on, but you also are receptive to inputs, questions, and help you revise your thinking, perhaps. So it's an opportunity to engage people, get a real feel of what's going on, constructive feedback, improvement ideas, all the benefit of caring by walking around. It's an art form, and you got to really. Some people are natural, at others you got to kind of work at it to be genuine when you're out there. The disadvantage of caring by walking around or managed by inspection, it takes time, of course, and you're only getting snapshots. You're not getting a broad picture of what's going on. So the other type of management control is management by exception. And here you're developing specific performance measures and monitoring progress against those performance results, the measures. The advantage is that you get feedback on an ongoing basis. You assess performance results. You identify trends. You have identified potential areas for strategic focus, your situation analysis that we talked about in an earlier episode. The disadvantage to management by exception, you can't measure everything quantitatively. And the other one is that nature of business will dictate what can and should be measured. Now, the recommendations I have for you in considering developing performance measures is, number one, identify critical success factors for your organization. Critical success factors. Now, these are the key pieces that will make or break your organization. What are the key factors that can make or break your organization, number one? And can you develop a performance measure around that? See, what you don't want to do is just get a whole host of measures and so forth and so on. And what does this all mean? Focus, 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 which we continually talk about the importance of that in sound strategy building. And so pick the critical few and see if you can measure those. Do not make the mistake of measuring things just because they're easy to measure. Okay. That's a major faux pas many times of leadership teams. So the second thing you want to do in thinking of performance measures is to review your critical success factors and determine if and how you can measure each. Can this critical success factor be measured quantitatively? If so, describe the appropriate measure or measures. Secondly, develop a specific formula or formulas to gather and measure the information. And the third thing, determine just how the data is going to be collected, what, when, who, okay? If you can't measure a critical success factor quantitatively, then you look at alternative means that can be used to assess results, surveys, focus groups, that sort of thing. And of course, you're carrying by walking around, you're management by inspection. Is there an advantage in formalizing any carrying by walking around activities? So those are alternatives if you can't measure it quantitatively. It's important as you develop performance measures to be clear on your terminology. I have 5 things here for you. Measure, that's the ongoing performance measure that you think is realistic for whatever you're trying to measure. Initially, you need some time to gather maybe information, some history. But you don't want to keep changing that just because you make it. That's a mistake that many times leadership teams make it. What you want to do is have the goal. You could have a measure, and if you keep changing, not a good measure. You may update it with history and so forth, but you want to pretty much make it timeless. And you set a goal, if you're kind of far away from that measure, to get closer, or even if you made the measure, a goal to exceed it, if it makes good business sense to do so. So separate measure from goal, okay? Goal is the intent, future intent for a certain time period. Goal and measure, 2 different things. And the target is, of course, the realistic quantitative standard that you set. The actual is what actually happens, and the variance is the difference between the two. So measure is what you came up with to measure something. Target is the realistic quantitative standard. The goal is something you set for yourself to be on target or go over it or get closer to target. And then you have the actual and the variance. And those are some of the caveats I had. And the key one there is don't change the target just because you made it. Okay. There's something called a balanced scorecard, created or popularized by Kaplan and Norton some years ago. And it's a very good idea. In other words, there's a tendency organizations have to just tend to measure the financial, especially larger organizations, the quarterly results and so forth. And then the other pieces that go into making up that result don't get the scrutiny that they should. So they came up with the idea, first of all, the caveats go beyond just the financials. And they talked about different perspectives. They had different perspectives. My perspective, if you want to start playing with a balanced scorecard where you have enough measures that you have confidence in, critical success factors that go wider than just the financial, my perspectives or areas would be marketing, customer service, operations, processes, and workforce capability. My 5: marketing, customer service, operations, processing, and workforce capability. The first 3 are external measures, and the last 2, processes and workforce capability, are internal measures. So you might just play with that and see if there are measures there that make sense, even though it may not be a critical success factor. It just makes sense for that particular area of emphasis or that perspective. Okay, that's for your consideration. Now that completes our walk through the strategic framework, again outlined in my book, Making and Fulfilling Your Dreams as a Leader, to help you formulate and execute a sound strategy. Extremely, extremely important. Next time, we're going to go to the third and final of the 3 areas of emphasis, my imperatives for successful leadership, and that's creating a culture of commitment. And we'll have 8 episodes on that. Okay, stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, you take care of yourself. Good talking with you.